There are any number of reasons that one might study Paul. First of all, he's a fascinating figure. Here's an individual who was born into a Jewish family and by his own testimony becomes a Jew who outstrips his contemporaries. He says that he was circumcised on the 8th day, of the tribe of Benjamin, from the people of Israel, a Hebrew of Hebrews. According to the law, he says, I'm a Pharisee. According to zeal, persecuting the church. According to righteousness, relative to the law, he says he's blameless. This is his testimony in Philippians 3, 5, and 6. Here's a person who, however, encounters the risen Christ en route to Damascus. And for him, it's a game changer. He's never the same. And so from one who was an individual who sought to destroy the church by his own testimony to one who was proclaiming the very message and the very person that he once sought to obliterate. Here's a figure who incites incredible interest. Not only that, here's an individual who becomes a zealous missionary, taking the gospel from Jerusalem to Rome and perhaps beyond. So one reason to study Paul is because Paul himself is a fascinating figure. Another reason, it seems, that Paul deserves study is he's a compelling writer. Those who have read his letters or have heard of his letters begin to dip into his letters and they find here is a profound thinker. Some scholars even suggest that Paul is the first Christian theologian who begins to think through the implications of Jesus' life, crucifixion, resurrection, promised return. And Paul has profound insights into not only Christ, but those who would follow him. And so as you begin to read Paul's letters, you're drawn in, captivated, not only by his person, but now by his literary productivity. A third reason that folks find Paul compelling is they themselves are Christians or are Bible readers or interested in Paul by virtue of the fact that they crack open their New Testaments and all of a sudden, here's a letter from Paul, and here's a letter from Paul, and here's a letter from Paul. And by the time they finish counting up, there are 13. And Hebrews traditionally has been attributed to Paul. So there is yet a 14th letter that has some connection with Paul. Paul then features in Acts 13 to 28, yet another New Testament document that has a connection with Paul. Paul's mentioned in 2 Peter, and some say then that James is in conversation with Paul. So before you turn around, 16 of the 27 New Testament documents have some connection in relation to Paul. So it seems to me if one is a Christian or is interested in faith, that Paul, as R.S. Thomas has said, is the man mountain. You might want to avoid Paul, but at the end of the day, people who are serious about faith must do business with him.